With Resident Evil 9 coming out this Friday, here is my ranking for all the Resident Evil games that I have played, and I have played Resident Evils 1 through 8 in their most modern incarnation. And starting off our list at number 8 in last place, I have Resident Evil 1. This game, I don't think it's a terrible game, but this is one that I think just has so many flaws. The biggest problem that I have with Resident Evil 1 Remake is the quality of life. There are so many small things that this game has that just really do annoy me, and they do add up over time. One of the biggest problems that I have with this game is the fact that every single door you open has a loading screen, and when you first play this game and you don't know the map, that means for every single door, yeah, those loading screens, they add up over time. I also don't like the fact that the inventory that you have in this game does not grow over time, and the reason why I have such a big problem with this is, once again, on my first playthrough where I did not know which key items I need at which moment because, it's Resident Evil, there were so many times where I had to needlessly backtrack, try to get the item that I had in my treasure chest so I can get advance the game. And when you're doing all this backtracking, once again, there's loading screen for all the doors, and that time just adds up and just really is annoying to me. That said, this game is not all bad. There are some really good things about it. Like, number one, this is the most pure Resident Evil game. Like, yes, this is the first one, but this is Resident Evil to its most essential traits. And that's pretty good. And also, when it comes to all the Resident Evil games, when it comes to the atmosphere, the vibe, this one is by far the best one. So this game, even though it has a lot of flaws that I am really not a big fan of, at the same time though, it has so many good quality that it spawned the franchise. And now moving on to 7th place, I have Resident Evil 5. Resident Evil 5 to me is not a Resident Evil game. To me, what makes a Resident Evil game is resource management, horror, exploration, and puzzles. Resident Evil 5 is not a scary game at all. It has no horror. There is no exploration. It is hyperlinear. And technically there is one puzzle, but that puzzle is so easy that I'm not even going to count it. So the only thing this game has that makes it Resident Evil is resource management. And I do think that this game's resource management is one of the most creative in the series. You are not only managing the resource of yourself, but also your partner. And I do think that does add a lot of dynamic in how you manage your resource. Outside of resource management, this game is not Resident Evil. Yes, it does have Chris, Jill, and Albert, but gameplay wise, this is not what I want in a Resident Evil game. And so for that, I'm gonna have this at 7th place. And similarly, in 6th place, I have Resident Evil 6. My problems with Resident Evil 5 also apply to Resident Evil 6, except RE6 is even less Resident Evil than RE5, because RE5 at least still has resource management. This game doesn't even have that. RE6 is a full-on action-adventure game that just happens to have Resident Evil characters. But the reason why I have this game over RE5 is I just think the gameplay for RE6 is better than RE5. When looking at this game as a pure action game, it's actually not that bad. The only problem is that it takes place in the Resident Evil franchise, which is not supposed to be this action-oriented. So yeah, RE6, I don't view it as a Resident Evil game, but I still have it ahead of RE5 solely for the fact that the gameplay is just that much better. And moving on to Resident Evil games that I really do like, I have Resident Evil 7, and it kind of pains me to have it this low. Resident Evil 7 is by far the scariest Resident Evil game, and it's not even close. Out of all video games that I've ever played in my life, RE7 is the only game where I had to pause because I was that scared when playing it. The horror in this game, it is immaculate, and honestly, it's so good to the point that's kind of detrimental. My first playthrough with this game is amazing. It was magical, but that's kind of the problem because the thing about horror that once you see it coming, it's not as scary the second time around, and so this game to me just does not hold up as well on replaythroughs. Once again, this game is really scary and I can't emphasize that enough. But the thing is, once you remove the horror element away and look at everything else, I do find somewhat lackluster. There really isn't that much enemy variety and the bosses, they could be better. But even though this game did not hold up the best on replays, when it comes to playing that game for the very first time, it is truly magical and I cannot emphasize that enough. And now entering in the top half, in number 4, I have Resident Evil 3 Remake. This is the first Resident Evil game that I ever played. This game has some very valid criticisms. I actually beat this game in one day. Yes, this game, it is criminally short, and the amount of content they cut from the original Resident Evil 3, it is truly saddening. At the same time though, I did have fun playing this. Once again, this is my first Resident Evil game, so this was my introduction to the franchise, and I had a pretty good time. Being chased down by Nemesis, it was truly horrifying, especially because this is the first time I ever dealt with a stalker type enemy, and feeling so helpless against them, it really was heart pounding at moments. Also, when it comes to the boss fights, I did find the boss fights to be pretty fun. That first boss fight with Nemesis on top of that building, and then you have this dog form where you have this remote bomb. I just thought these boss fights were pretty fun. Resident Evil 3 Remake, yes, it does have some problems. At the same time though, this game is quite replayable, and also this is the first game for me in the series, and I do have a special place for that. And now with that, we are now entering the top 3, and at number 3, I have Resident Evil 8 Village. This game, it slaps. I thought the story is very much heartwarming with Ethan trying to save his daughter. This game also does have some pretty scary moments, especially at House Beneviento. But looking at the core gameplay, I just think it's really good. I really do like how they handled the first person. It's a lot smoother than it is in RE7. And also the action, it's pretty well done. And then for the boss fights, I found a lot of the boss fights to be very good too. That said though, I don't think this game is pretty perfect. Like, I do like each section in the game, but I do feel like some of those sections could have been longer. It would have been better. My favorite section is the Lady Dimitrescu section because it felt like classic RE, and I just wish that it was longer. But this game is still great, no matter what. And with that, we now enter in second place, I have Resident Evil 2 Remake. This game is one of the best games ever made. It slaps, it rocks, like, come on, it's Resident Evil 2. Leon, he is my favorite character in Resident Evil. This game is one reason why. Claire Redfield, I think she's also amazing in this game. Mr. X, he's one of the best stalker types enemies. Like, this game is just great. However, as good as Resident Evil 2 is, my favorite game in the series, it is Resident Evil 4 Remake. This is easily one of the best games ever made. Leon, he's my favorite character in Resident Evil, and this game is the biggest reason why. Leon, he's just so effing awesome. Leon, he is awesome, and then when it comes to the actual gameplay, this is by far the best gameplay in Resident Evil. Like, the gunplay, the shooting mechanics, all those things, it's just amazing. And while even though this game is more action-oriented, it still keeps the horror elements. The Regenerators, they're one of the scariest things ever, but even in the village and the castle section, there were just moments where I was just kind of like scared about what's going to happen. The boss fights, they're amazing. The enemy variety, it is just immaculate. And even the puzzles, I had some fun with the puzzles too. Resident Evil 4, it's one of the best games ever made, and it was pretty easy to put it at number 1. And with that, that is my ranking for all the Resident Evil games that I have played. Resident Evil 9, it can't come soon enough.